Hi, I'm Old Norse Specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford, and I'm back for another in my continuing series of lessons in the Old Norse language. This time I'm looking at weak verbs of yet another kind. So we've looked at what I call the I stems and the A stems. Now we're going to look at the E stems and how the most common of those, hafa, have, is used to form perfective statements. I have done, I had done. So E stems are fundamentally pretty similar to the very common I stem verbs with a couple differences. So in the present tense, let's take hava, have, as our base example. In the present tense, the endings are more or less like for I stem. We have I, ir, id, a. Hopefully this is blocking the wind from getting in the microphone. I, ir, id, a. But if the root of the verb is subject to I mutation, it will be I mutated, which it isn't in I stems. So, for example, we have hava, which goes ek heavy, so we've got I mutation in the present singular, just like in strong verbs. That's maybe a good way to think of it. It's like a cross between a strong verb and a I stem. You've got the endings of the I stem, but you've got the I umlaut, I mutation in the present singular, like in a strong verb. So ek heavy, thu heavier, han heavier, ver hovum. I mutation is turned off in the plural, but you get U mutation in the first person plural because of the U. So ver hovum, ther havid, and ther hava. Now, hava is such a common verb that it's got the additional peculiarity that for some speakers, and this becomes more and more true as time goes on in the Old Norse period, actually analogize it to a strong verb enough that it's basically got a strong present without the I in the present singular. So you end up with ek hev, thu hever, han hever, instead of heavy, heavier, heavier. But the forms with I are more common in your good Old Norse texts. Now the past tense, again, endings are basically like your I stem, so just remember that the I umlaut is turned off in the past. So you get ek havda, thu havdir, han havdi, ver hovdum, ther hovdud, and ther hovdu. All right, it's not too terribly difficult. Now there are some other common E stems, one of which is segja. And notice that since there's a J at the end of the root, remember the root of the verb is the part before you get to the a that is the infinitive marker. The root ends in a J. J causes I umlaut on its own, so the root is already I umlauted in the present. So you don't have to turn off the I umlaut for the present plural because of the J. So you're going to get ek segi. Remember that J will disappear before I's. So it's not segji or something like that. Ek segi, thu segir, han segir, ver segium, thid, ther segið, and ther segja. Now notice, again, J will disappear before I's. It, however, will come back, as it were, before U and A. Then in the past tense, let's keep this simple and just say that it's by the three consonant tendency where you drop the second of three consonants. You're going to have the J drop in all the forms of the past tense, and the I umlaut is therefore going to be turned off. So you're going to go back to the true root vowel, which is an A, and you're going to get ek sagda, thu sagdir, han sagdi, ver sogdum, ther sogdud, and ther sogdu. So those are your two most common E stems. Then there's the opposite of segja, which rhymes with it, and that's thegja, to be silent. which is pretty great. See if you can guess the forms of segja and the present and past tense. Pause the video and see if you can do it. All right, what you ought to get is ek segi, thu segir, han segir, ver segjum, their segið, and their segja. Past tense, ek thagda, I was silent, I shut up. Thu thagdir, han thagdi, ver thogdu, their thogdu, their thogdu. Other ones include liva, to live, where there's no I mutation to worry about at all because the root I has no relationship to I mutation. And that is, by the way, liva, to be alive, right? Not to dwell somewhere, because it's bua, the class 7 strong verb we've already looked at. All right, so learn hafa, liva, segja, segja, these E-stem weak verbs. And after a brief word from my sponsor, I'm going to come back and tell you about how hafa is used with past participles and a little bit about past participles to begin with. All right, so what is a past participle? This can be a little bit obscured if most of your language experience is with English, because for most verbs in English, the past participle and the past tense are the same. Now, that's not always true. There are especially strong verbs in English. By the way, weak and strong are meaningful terms in English as much as they are in Old Norse, right? I sing, I sang is a strong verb where the past tense is indicated by a vowel change rather than a suffix. And I walk, I walked is a weak verb where the past tense is indicated by a suffix. So it's the exact same terminology you can use for English as well as Old Norse, because they come from the same Proto-Germanic and ultimately Proto-Indo-European phenomena. Okay, but some strong verbs in English actually have distinct past participles, and that's where it's best to focus on learning past participles if it's a new concept to you. So think about, we know I see in the present tense, I saw in the past tense, but I have seen. Seen is the past participle that's used with have or had to form a notion of some action that's completed in the past, right, at some distinct period of time usually. So I have seen, I had seen. Another example is I take, past tense I took, past participle I have taken, I've taken, I had taken, I've taken. So taken, past participle. Another one is go. I go in the present, I went in the past, I have gone, I had gone. Gone is your past participle. Notice also that past participles are usable as adjectives, right? This is the this is the often seen tourist attraction, right? Seen is being used as an adjective there on attraction. Or this is the road not taken, right? So taken is being used as an adjective with road. Or this is the person who is gone. I mean, at that point, there's a little bit of a blurry line between past participle and adjective, but you could talk about a gone person, a person who's departed, perhaps as a euphemism for dying. So in Old Norse, how were past participles formed? Well, it's easy for your weak verbs. Basically, take the root of an I-stem weak verb, right? So remember the A, remove the A, that's the infinitive marker, and then add the eth, or T, or D, that is the past tense marker, and then add your adjective endings. So for example, spoken, right? A spoken word, perhaps you could use this adjectively, or I have spoken. If we're using mala, which is an I-stem weak verb, our full participial forms would be malter, maltan, malts, maltum, maltir, malta, maltra, maltum, malt, malta, maltrar, maltri, maltar, maltar, meltra, meltum. Melt, melt, melts, meltu, melt, melt, meltra, maltum. Now, this may seem intimidating, but remember, if you're just using it as an adjective, a spoken word, a spoken saga, something like that, you just inflect it to agree with the noun that it's describing, just like any other adjective. If you're using it in the sense I have spoken, you just use the neuter nominative accusative singular. So ek hevi malt is Old Norse, I have spoken. Ek havde malt, that's I had spoken. Now, in very archaic texts, for example, in some of the poems of the Poetic Edda, sometimes if there's an object to the verb, the past participle will be inflected to agree with it. So, I have spoken a saga in archaic Old Norse that might come out as ek hevi sogu malta. I have a saga, I have spoken a saga, and saga is being inflected to agree with sogu, feminine accusative singular. But already in the 1200s, when most of the sagas are being written down, that has been abandoned, and you just use the neuter accusative singular like you do by default. So ek hevi malt sogu. All right. Now for an A-stem weak verb, like say skapa, same basic deal. You take your past tense stem, so skapad, right, for an A-stem, and then you just add your adjective endings. Skapadr, skapadan, skapads, skopudum, skapadir, skapada, skapadra, skopudum, skopud, skapada, skapadrar, skapadri, skapadar, skapadar, skapadra, skopudum, skapat, skapat, skapads, skopudu, skopud, skopud, skapadra, skopudum. And the same notes about usage apply as for I-stem weak verbs. For your E-stems, it's a little bit unpredictable. Segja has a past participle that looks more like an I-stem, so you got sagdar, and then neuter accusative singular sagt. The neuter accusative singular is always going to be the one that you're going to see the most. Hava is the same, so you've got havdr and haft. And then thegja, of course, is going to work just like segja. They're rhyming words. And then, what was the other one that I gave you all? Liva. Liva actually looks like an A-stem, so you've got livadr, livat. And then hava, havadr, hav. I think I already told you that. Now for strong verbs, the endings are a little bit different, and the vowel and the root is going to be different depending on the class of strong verb. So I'm sorry to tell you that. So this is the sort of fifth principal part of a strong verb. Remember, we've looked at the principal parts, or if you know the third person singular present, the third person plural present, the third person singular past, and the third person plural past, you can predict all the other forms of the strong verb. Well, another form that's going to be distinct is the past participle. So, for the classes of strong verbs we've looked at so far, which start with class 3. In class 3, if the root vowel is followed by something that's not a nasal, not N or M, then the root vowel is going to be O. So verda, the past participle, is orden. Now, this is going to, these strong verb past participles are going to look kind of like a combination of your regular adjective endings like you have on the weak verb past participles with the endings for, say, min, thin, sen, my, your, his own. So what you're going to get there is orden, orden, ordens, ordnu, ordnir, ordna, ordina, ordnum, ordin, ordna, ordinar, ordini, ordnar, ordnar, ordina, ordnum, ordit, ordit, ordins, ordnu, ordin, ordin, ordina, ordnum. And again, you're only going to see these inflected forms typically, except in very archaic texts, as adjectives. So for instance, the The man who's become old could be something like gamal orðin maður. The woman who's become old, gamal orðin kona. But mostly you're just going to see orðið, ek hefi orðið, I have become. Now, the reason why it's orðið and not forðið is that in Old Norse, V's always disappear before O, U, I, Y. This is the same reason why it's Old Norse Odin, but Old English Woden, Old Norse Orð, but Old English word, just English word, Old Norse Ulfr, but English wolf, Old Norse Ormr, but English worm. Now, if your class 3 is a class 3b, where the root ends in a nasal N or M plus another consonant, so this is your finna, binda type, finna, then the vowel in the root and the past participle will be U. So for instance, finna, the past participle is fundin, fundit. Notice that the shape of the root will remain the same as in the past plural. So for in the example of finna, that D is going to emerge like it does in the past plural form, fundum, fundu, fundu. All right, so your class 3s look like that. Class 4s, like bera and koma, you have an O in the root, and then the same endings as we reviewed for orðin. So borin, borit, that means born, right? You can see how some English words that are kind of fossilized now actually come out of past participles. Borin, borit, that means born, carried, and then komin, komet, that means come, I have come, ek hevi komet. Class 5s, typically what you're going to see is the exact same vowel as in the root. So drepa, drepen, drepet, have killed, geva, gevin, gevit, have given. An exception to that on the surface is sjo, see, where the past participle is san, but remember that the actual root is se, s long e, and so this is coming back in the past participle. So san, and the I is disappearing after the long e, so this is going to go san, 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 sanum, sanir, sana, senna, senum, san, sena, senar, seni, senar, senar, senna, senum, set, set, sans, senu, san, san, senna, senum. And then class 6 and class 7 will be uncharacteristically light on you because the vowel in the root and the past participle is the same as the vowel in the root and the infinitive. So fara, past participle is farin, farit, meaning gone, right? I have gone, ek hevi farit. And then a class 7, like, what's an example we've looked at? Like bua, live, prepare, dwell. The past participle is buin, buit, so ek hevi buit, I have dwelled. All right, the exception to this is if the root vowel is a short letter A, the sound ah, and it is followed by a K, a G, or NG. So taka, ganga are examples of this. So then there is I mutation, so you end up with, and it's only if it's followed by K, G, NG. There's complicated reasons for this we don't need to get into here. But then the past participle of taka, taken, is tekin, teket, not taken, taket. Past participle of ganga is gengin, gengit, not gangen, gangit. So ek, heavy, gengit, I have walked. The unexpected member of this class is fo, because fo ultimately comes from a root fantr. So the past participle of fo, fek, git is fengen, fengit, ek heavy fengit, I have gotten. All right, so this is a fair amount to remember. So what I'm going to do is at the end here, I'm going to show you an updated principal parts list for all the verbs we've gone over before, including their past participles. I'm going to give you some exercises to make sure that you can practice doing the past participle forms correctly, both just the one you'd normally see, the neuter, nominative, accusative, singular, and the inflected adjectival-like forms. And then some readings involving past participles, especially as they're used with hafa to form perfective tense, i.e. since something is completed at a discrete point in the past. I hope these videos are still somewhat interesting, useful, informative for those of you following along. You are sort of over the hill as far as a lot of this grammar stuff goes. I promise. Every one of these videos that you get through and you learn the material from gets you a little bit closer to reading just about anything you want in Old Norse. There is an endpoint. All right, kind of. I mean, there's at least a point where you're reading confidently and you're not having to learn, 30 minutes of grammar every time. All right, well, folks, from beautiful Colorado, as always, let me wish you all the best.